talk about YAML in Copilot Studio. If you want to know more about YAML in general, check the links at the bottom of this document for formal documentation on YAML as a coding language. In this video, I'm going to focus on where and why you might want to be aware of YAML integrations in Copilot Studio. Now, what you see on the screen here is a Copilot that I built that is just called a Trekkie Guru. This is a Copilot that has, for its knowledge, a site called www.startrek.com, and that's all it has. It has no custom topics or anything else, but its goal, as it says in the description, is to be a Star Trek guru and specialist, which helps to teach us the history and facts around the Star Trek series and universe. It has turned on in the settings generative AI, and so it is leveraging generative AI for answering questions, and its knowledge repository is that site. Okay, so we're going to go back out of settings, and from here, let's look at a couple of the out-of-the-box scenarios where you can easily understand the YAML. I'm going to start with two system topics that are most commonly known. The first two that you get with just about any Copilot is the conversation start and the conversation booster. Now, conversation start is a topic that controls this initial welcome message, right? So when people hit this Copilot, how does it introduce itself? Now, by default, I'll tell you, I did edit this a little because by default, this conversation start says something slightly different, and it uses the bot name variable to always say what its name is. And I changed that. But let me show you kind of how it does. So I'm just going to replace what I typed with a system variable, which is bot name, right? So if I just, sorry, I meant to search. So if I just click on here, system, and then type bot up here, you'll see that it has a bot name. This is the default. So if I save this right away and then I refresh my test panel, you'll see that instead of saying I'm Trekkie Guru, it will say the name of the Copilot. So whatever name it has. Now, I don't want it to say that because I'm using a naming protocol that I don't want to be seen by my users. So I had revised that. So I had revised it using the out-of-the-box message node, but I'm going to introduce you to YAML in this way as well. You can also edit your topics using YAML. So where is YAML? Under the more. So there's a more at the top here, and you look at those three dots above more and select Open Code Editor. When you do that, you get the configuration file for that topic. No matter how complicated your topic is when you do this, it's going to give you a single page configuration file. No clicking, it flattens everything out so that you can read it easily. YAML is so much easier to read even than XML and JSON that it is perfect for defining the configuration of Copilot Studio topics, actions, and or anything that might be triggered. Okay, so here I'm going to replace this with the Trekkie Guru. So in the same way I could edit in the canvas via the UI, I can also edit in here, right? Which in some cases can be easier than in others, right? So conversation start, really simple. It's basically the welcome message. But let's look at conversational boosting, right? This is something that will be enabled whenever you're using generative AI. And it has a trigger and create generative answers node. Let's look at what this looks like behind in the YAML. So if I open the code editor here, you'll see that it is what happens on unknown intent. So understand that conversational boosting does not have to be directed to. It will automatically be directed to if the intent is unknown. So there's no topic phrase or topic model description or plugin model description that seems to match the intent of what the person typed. So in that case, it's going to conclude unknown intent and just automatically go here, where we'll attempt to generate answers over the knowledge sources. Okay. Now notice that the first action here is search and summarize content. So you may say, Audrey, no, it's not. It's create generative answers. Well, that's because YAML has an internal name for actions that may not match the visible name that you see in the canvas. But here's a secret tip. If you hover over the kind in the YAML, it'll tell you what the display name is for that in the canvas. So if you look up here in the little gray box that popped up over search and summarize content, it tells me that this is create generative answers. So if you're ever like, what does that mean? Just kind of hover over it and it will tell you what it is in the natural UI, right? What is it called? So hovering over the kind words will kind of define that kind, right? So that you can see it in the way you see it in the UI, okay? So one thing that I really love about this is it flattens out my configuration, and this is where my step one, I read configuration with YAML whenever I want to save time because it flattens it all out. For instance, notice here we've got additional instructions, and it says respond to all questions in the English language. Now we did this because we know that Copilots can speak just about any language. So if somebody asks them a question in Spanish, it's going to answer them in Spanish. It's smart enough to do that. The language model is smart enough to do that. But we don't want it to. We only want it to give answers in English, so we added that as custom instructions. And that shows up here in the YAML as additional instructions. And again, if I hover over that, what is it called in display or in the canvas? It's called custom instructions. And it even kind of gives a little bit of the description that is provided in the canvas when you use that feature. Okay, so remember that this is a really great place to read configuration. Your condition groups are down here, so you could see the condition group and all the conditions and what happened if this happens and that happens. So really nice for reading instructions. Now, in addition to that, though, you may want to use it for tweaking. So let's go back to the one we looked at earlier, which was the conversation start. Let's go there and let's say we want to do something different based on some question we ask. So if I add a question here, ask a question, what's your rank? And I will let them go ahead and give me whatever answer they want. So I'm going to use the user's entire response, and I'm going to rename this variable rank, right? And save. All right, so I've done that in the UI. You all know how to do that already. But let's look at it, what that turns out looking like in YAML. So I'm going to hit the more. I think I didn't let it save. Hold on, let's just do that again. I was rushing it. Don't rush it. Let it do its thing. Save. Let's let it save. And then I'm going to open up the YAML. So more, open code editor. And you can see here what that node looks like in YAML, right? It's a question. Here's its ID. It allows interruptions. It has a variable named rank, and it gives, again, this is going to be your backend for the variable, right? And then the prompt, and then which entity is it being stored in, and this one is just the user's entire response, which is an entity, okay? So, but what if I want to ask another question and I don't want to go back to the UI? I can actually clone and revise this by hitting return, going all the way back to the beginning, because you want your indentation to be the same. And now I'm adding another question that's similar. So I might want to say, what's your race? So species might be a good word too. In this case, don't know how to spell species. For instance, right? Now, here's key though. Because I'm doing a different question, I need to double check the entity is still good. Yeah, I still want it to be whatever the user says, right? Because I don't want to specify all the species of the universe. You know how that is in Star Trek. But I do want to change the ID, right? Because I want to make sure that each of my nodes has a unique ID. So you can just revise them slightly, right? But they need to be uniquely different. And if you are doing a custom variable, okay, like in here, I've copied and pasted a variable called topic rank. I want to make sure I also rename my variable so that I don't override the other one, okay? So now I have two different variable names as well. I'm going to hit save. And I can keep doing that, kind of cloning and revising. The key being to remember to change the IDs and the variables so that when we come back to the UI, you get this really nice, good working thing. So I think this is like the second reason to want to know YAML. To be able to make tweaks, whether you're revising the existing code, adding your own customizations like we did with the name of the bot, or you're cloning and revising something, or copying and pasting something, that kind of thing. You can do that in the YAML as well, okay? The third reason you might want to be involved in YAML is because you can bring in YAML from somebody else. So in my case here, we're going to create a new topic that I'm going to create from blank. And this is something that I actually copy and pasted from another Copilot, but it will actually, it's a topic that will find the International Space Station over the Earth and tell you where it is in relation to you. So I can just give that a name ISS, then I'm going to open up the code editor and I'm going to delete this. As soon as I do that, I'm going to get some red error message because it can't be empty. But then I'm going to go and copy and paste the code that my friend, cousin, in my case, myself, had created, and I can paste that in there. And now I have that topic configured in my Copilot, and I didn't actually do the work. And I think this is extremely cool when you think about fusion teams, right? You can actually make repositories of reusable YAML. Perhaps we are focused on science in our company and we need this ISS situation to be done in bots all over the place. So we can store that YAML somewhere and just share it. And this can be revised, you know, like you can make tweaks to it. But I'm going to go back. I'm sorry, I saved it. I'm going to go and remove from the intro. I'm going to remove those messages that we added because I added them just so you could see how they show up in the YAML. So I'm going to add these two. I'm going to delete these two questions so that this goes back to normal. And I'm going to hit save. And then I'm going to refresh and I'm going to see if we can find the ISS together. So I'm going to do, where is the ISS? And then I'm going to press send. And I'm in the test panel here working. And so it basically is going to first ask me, what is the location of the of where I live. And so I'm going to put the Microsoft address here, Redmond, Washington. And basically in that YAML is a call to HTTPS that is actually using an API that can find the ISS. And then it's using Google Static Maps in order to return a map showing where I am, which is the U, versus where the ISS is above us, right? So you can see how far away the ISS is right now, okay? So that looks like a pretty complicated solution, but when you have fusion teams and you're leveraging YAML, you can actually share these types of YAML files between each other and expedite people's ability to do more complicated things with less effort. So those are the three things that I would say are the most important reasons to know about YAML in Copilot Studio. 1, enables you to read configuration files easily, quickly, And it's much easier to read than, say, XML and JSON. You'll just start picking up on it. And whenever you get lost, just hover over something and it will kind of tell you what it says in the UI, okay? Second thing, it's great for making revisions. Like we copied and pasted some questions. You could also come in here and paste some additional trigger phrases without having to hit the plus sign, without having to, just kind of keep clicking plus and stuff in the UI. So it's like you could copy and paste it from Excel into here. You could clone and revise things. You could even change configuration, but I would be careful again. Be careful, don't muck around in here too much if you're not comfortable, because you can accidentally make mistakes simply by, pressing a space bar by accident, and deleting that colon is going to give you that unfriendly error message at the top that you might not know what to do about, right? So be very careful when you're working in here, because the punctuation, the indents, they all matter. And if you need to, you can also visit the YAML checker sites. There are plenty of them. You can Bing this, Google this, look for YAML checkers, and you can actually have your YAML checked, all right? But the red tells you something's wrong, and so usually you can troubleshoot it. But move slowly in here when you're editing, and don't start hitting space bar and tab unless you're paying close attention. All right, thirdly, this is great for importing other people's YAML. And importing other people's YAML is like what we did with this ISS. Whenever you see something that you would like to reuse in your Copilot that somebody else has made, ask them for the YAML to save you a ton of time, right? And maybe you just tweak it. Or this is great when you're troubleshooting other people, right? You're helping other people and they're explaining what's going on, but you don't really understand. So you say, give me your YAML for that topic so that I can pull it into my own bot and look at it closely. That's a really great way to troubleshoot. If you can't do screen share, I think it's a next best thing when you're helping others to resolve issues. You can even edit the YAML and send it back to them revised, okay? So these 3 ways are the reasons I think that even if you're not a developer, you might want to know about YAML. Thank you for watching this video, and check out the links at the bottom of this document. Please do share your feedback as well.